What's cool is with the DAWs, you can do so many like complex things that you want to, as a music producer, like stand out. So for example, a lot of people use samples. There's audio files of a sampled noise. Say somebody burps, like I just did. and they can sample that and mess around with it and turn it into like maybe a kick or a bass note or something. And so you can really do whatever you want. And so what I like to do is mix things enough so it's different from somebody else's if they do use that same plugin sound, so that it sounds like my own.
And you've remixed many songs. One that stands out in particular is Oreo's "Help Me," which you did a remix of, which was so different to the original one. But how do you go about remixing something that already exists? What exactly are you remixing?
So Charlie said it the best, I feel like, from all the definitions I've heard. But I love when you think of remixing, it's like, I hear a song and I see how it sounds and I listen to the lyrics. Then I'm like, man, I feel like I could portray something different with these lyrics, with my sound, to get those lyrics across better, almost, in a different way. And that's exactly how I felt with "Help Me." It was like, I listened to the song quite a few times, and then I read the lyrics on their own. I think she had them in the bottom of her YouTube description. And I was like, this is like a dark song. And so I could totally turn that into like this cool, heavy, dark song. And that's what I wanted to do.
How do you even start collaborating with other musicians? Who contacts who, and how does the process even work until the end result?
Well, honestly, usually it's just you make friends with them and you kind of connect on similar levels with right now with nerdcore, and or video games or anime or something. You connect on that, you make friends with them, and then usually they reach out to you like, oh, hey, your production would sound cool with this vibe. Would you want to produce this song and have my vocals on top of it or something? Or produce this idea and we can work on it that way. Or I reach out to them and say, hey, I just produced this instrumental. Would you give it a listen and see if you'd want to sing over it? Or something like that.
It's also so casual. I keep getting surprised by how little paperwork is involved in this kind of stuff, because the end result is always so professional, but it starts by just saying, like, just emailing someone and saying, hey, do you want to work on this? And then it just snowballs from there into something that's, very, very competent and professional, but no paperwork. It's all just or just emails.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And you got to remember, so I'm going to take a half-gallon thing of water here. Sorry, I'm slightly sick still. You got to remember that, yeah, it's got to be casual with making music. It's got to flow good. It can't be so business that you forget that it's fun. It's fun to make music. You got to like reach in that kid inside of you, and keep it and embrace it almost, because if not, nothing cool is going to come out, because music isn't forced. It flows, and if it doesn't flow, then it's not going to come out good.
I've seen other music producers outsource some of their mixing, at least. I see some people get, I think it's Matrix Audio or just some other company, to mix audio that they have made. And I'm wondering, well, if you're not mixing it, like, what, for as an example, what are you more than everything else? What exactly could you outsource to other people while you still remain a music producer?
Oh man. So you mean by yeah, outsource. Okay. Well, so usually uh, yeah, usually as a music producer, what's funny is there's so many different things involved in production and music production. You know, have the engineer that usually does all the mixing, then you have the music producer that does all the producing in the sense of placing the sounds, layering, like making it all the structure and all that. And then you usually have the composition. Somebody writes the song. The producer doesn't always do that. So somebody composes it. And then you have, a lyricist as well that comes on top of that. And then once the producer gets all that stuff structured into a song where it's all placed correctly, the engineer usually comes in and mixes it so it all sounds good and level. And then they send it out to a mastering engineer that also masters it so it's at the right level, but not distorted or crushed per se, compressed, and that it's up to industry standard. So there's all these different really roles that the music industry has created that are really important, but they've made it seem like you can't do all of that on your own. And that's what kind of ticks me off from the music industry in that sense, making it seem impossible for anybody to do this. But it's possible, so possible. I'm not perfect at it. I can definitely get better, but I've gotten to a point where it's like, yeah, it still sounds good. And Charlie, same thing, he does all of the mixing and mastering on his own. And so does, I think, Fable and Divide Music. And I want to say Daddy Fast Snaps as well. So they all do it within their community. Sometimes they outsource the mastering portion, but the rest of it they do themselves.
Yeah, it's so often I see a song on one person's YouTube channel, and then in the description it's like, well, the mixing was done by this, the singing was done by this, and I'm like, well, then what did you do then? Why is it on your channel specifically? Who decides where the song eventually gets published? Yeah. Is it just the person who came up with the idea?
Yes. So usually, okay. For example, I See a Dreamer with Charlie. That was a 2-day thing. He had somebody compose that, the verses, I think the bridge, and then the chorus. And then he compiled it, switched things up to make it sound like him, like he would have written if he was to have composed it. Because really, if you think about it, everybody has their opinions of music, of what they like. So if a music producer sticks with that and everything they do, samples, sounds, whatever, synths, their sound is always going to come across whatever they use, because they're going to switch it up to what they like to hear. And that's what you got to stick with. You can't do like, oh, will the audience like this? Like, no, say you're doing something that's trendy on YouTube. That's what me and Charlie and the rest nerdcore community does. What does the audience want? But then with the music, it's like, hey, but I want this sound to come across, and you got to hone in on that.
I've been wondering about that, because I see people making songs about video games, for example, and I question whether they even really care. For example, Poppy's Playtime. I hate that game, not because of what the game is, but because of how people have responded to it. Nothing's happened yet there's so much fan art and fan songs about it. And what's even worse is something like Bendy and the Dark, Bendy and the Dark Revival, which doesn't exist yet, and people are already making songs about it. So when you are deciding to make a song about a game, how much of it is you're making a song to hit a certain trending audience at the time, and how much of it is you played the game and you liked it, and for yourself you want to make a song about it? What's the balance?
Oh man, that's tough. Because as with it being a full-time career, it's like, hey, you got to do what's popular, what's trendy, but also do what you want to do. For example, Poppy Playtime, for some reason, and my fiance, I've kind of scared her with this. I enjoy like, I don't know. I love horror vibes for some reason. I love psychotic. I don't know. I don't know if you've seen Sherlock Holmes with Robert Downey Jr.
The
Those,
first one, yeah.
yeah, yeah. So it's just very cool. I mean, Hans Zimmer, the soundtrack, so cool. It's so like chaotic and psychotic, and it gets that vibe across so well. And I love that chaotic vibe. And Poppy Playtime is very, horror driven, but also like I love the contrast of happy, fun area with a horror, scary monster roaming around. Um, and so yeah, I was like, I'm totally down to make a song for this. And so I tried to hone in on more of the story per se of what they were trying to get across. And what's his name? Matt Pat came out with a video to kind of what do you say, to kind of dive way deeper into the lore than he probably should have. But it was so cool and interesting, and that helped to write a song about. That was enough to write a song for.